Just another nameless face lost in the noise of New Orleans' French Quarter. A leukemia patient who wasn't just painting for recognition, she was painting to survive. Every brush stroke was a battle. Every sail a step closer to the chemotherapy she couldn't afford. Most people walked by too busy, too indifferent, until one man stopped. A billionaire, a philanthropist, and in true fashion for a man known for his generosity. He didn't just buy a painting, he changed her life forever. What happened next wasn't just a sale. It was the beginning of a story the world would never forget. The late afternoon sun hung low over the bustling streets of New Orleans, casting long golden shadows across the French Quarter. The air smelled of fresh beignets and rich coffee from nearby cafes, mixing with the distant notes of a jazz saxophonist playing on the corner. Tourists wandered in small groups, their cameras slung around their necks, snapping pictures of historic buildings with wrought iron balconies. Locals moved at a slower pace, accustomed to the rhythm of the city, their voices a murmur beneath the sounds of street performers and passing streetcars. Amid this constant motion, a small art stand sat tucked between a vendor selling handmade jewelry and a musician strumming an old acoustic guitar. Maya Brooks, 22, sat behind a folding table covered in vibrant canvases. Her work was raw, full of life, skies painted in streaks of burnt orange and deep indigo, cityscapes bathed in the glow of neon reflections, and landscapes that seemed to breathe under the weight of thick brush strokes. Each piece was a part of her, a fragment of the world as she saw it. But today, the world barely saw her back. People passed by, their gazes flickering to the stand before shifting away, uninterested or indifferent. Some slowed their steps just long enough to read the small handwritten sign propped against the table. Each painting is a hope. I'm fighting leukemia. A few passers-by glanced at the sign, their expressions shifting to quiet sympathy. But their feet kept moving. Sympathy didn't pay hospital bills. Maya had learned that early on in the sterile corridors of the Ochsner Medical Center, where doctors spoke in measured tones, careful and clinical. The words had lost their sting over time. Relapse, treatment plan, out-of-pocket costs. But what never dulled was the weight of knowing how much her illness was draining her family. Her mother worked double shifts at a diner. Her father picked up whatever extra hours he could at the mechanic shop. And still the hospital bills piled up like a wall she couldn't climb. The next round of chemotherapy was her last shot, but the cost was staggering. They had nothing left. So she had come here to Royal Street, where artists lined the sidewalks, selling their work to tourists, looking for souvenirs that held a little more soul. Maya wasn't looking for charity. She wasn't asking for donations. She was fighting back in the only way she knew how, with her art. But the fight was harder than she had imagined. A middle-aged woman in a linen dress paused in front of the stand, tilting her head as she admired a painting of a sprawling oak tree silhouetted against a twilight sky. Hope sparked in Maya's chest, fragile and fleeting. "How much is this one?" the woman asked, her voice warm, almost motherly. "80, Maya said, trying to keep her voice steady. The woman exhaled softly, the way people did when they wished they could say something else. "Oh, honey, I wish I could help. It's beautiful, really," she smiled. A sad little thing, then walked away. Maya forced herself to nod, to smile back, to act as though she didn't hear that kind of response a dozen times a day. A man in a fitted suit slowed just long enough to glance at her sign. His mouth pressed into a thin line. He turned and walked off without a word. An older couple, dressed like tourists, paused to admire a cityscape painting. The husband reached for his wallet, and, for a moment, Maya's heart climbed into her throat. But then his wife touched his arm, shaking her head, and they kept moving. By midday, the heat pressed down on her like a weight. Her body, already weakened from treatments, ached from sitting on the metal stool too long. The dizziness that had become an unwelcome part of her life crept in, making the edges of her vision blur. For a moment, she exhaled slowly, gripping the table, forcing herself to focus. Giving up wasn't an option. She had spent the last week pouring every ounce of energy into these paintings, knowing that each brushstroke wasn't just about art anymore. It was about survival, if she could sell enough. If people saw value in what she created, maybe, just maybe, she could afford the treatment that could save her life. But hope was a fragile thing. A man in a leather jacket sauntered up, his sunglasses perched on his head, hands tucked in his pockets. He eyed the paintings, lips twisting into a smirk. "Nobody buys real art anymore, kid," he muttered. "You should try selling prints, or, I don't know, get on TikTok or something." Maya's hands curled into fists in her lap. She swallowed down the sharp retort sitting on her tongue, letting the words settle like stones in her chest. She had dealt with people like him before, the ones who didn't understand, who thought dreams weren't worth chasing unless they came with guarantees. "I don't need advice," she said simply. "I just need to fight." The man snorted but didn't argue. He walked away, blending into the crowd like he had never been there. Maya let out a slow breath, shaking off the frustration. Somewhere in this city, maybe today, maybe tomorrow, someone would see her. Someone would recognize the worth in what she was doing. Not as an act of desperation, but as proof of resilience. She just had to hold on until then. For now she sat there, hands resting on her knees, watching the world move around her, feeling both invisible and exposed all at once. She had sold one painting so far. One. Every time someone glanced her way, hope flared in her chest, only to flicker and fade when they kept walking. The afternoon sun dipped lower, stretching shadows across the pavement. Another hour passed, then another, and still the paintings sat untouched, like secrets no one wanted to hear. Maya reached for her water bottle, her fingers trembling slightly as she took a sip. Her body was fighting against her, but she wasn't done yet. Because one way or another, she was going to win this battle. And she wasn't waiting for a miracle. She was making one. The late afternoon heat had settled into every inch of the street, pressing against Maya's skin like an unbearable weight. Her muscles ached, not just from sitting for hours, but from the slow gnawing exhaustion that had become a permanent part of her life. The weight of leukemia was more than just physical. It was the quiet, crushing presence of knowing she was running out of time. And yet, despite the ache, despite the fatigue humming in her bones, she stayed. A group of tourists strolled past, their voices bright with laughter as they pointed at a street performer juggling flaming torches. Not one of them glanced in her direction. A man in business attire strode by, eyes glued to his phone, completely unaware of the world around him. A teenage girl slowed for half a second, taking in the colors on the canvas before shrugging and moving on. Maya let out a slow breath, steadying herself. It wasn't their fault. People had their own lives, their own worries. Just because she was fighting for hers didn't mean they owed her anything. Still, the emptiness in her jar, the single bill resting there alone, felt like proof that the world wasn't listening. A shadow passed over her table. She looked up, blinking against the sunlight. A woman stood there, dark curls pulled into a loose ponytail, a well-worn leather messenger bag slung over her shoulder. She wore jeans and a fitted blazer, something effortlessly put together. The kind of polished but casual look that only professionals seem to master. But it wasn't her outfit that caught Maya's attention. It was the way she was looking at the paintings, really looking, her dark brown eyes scanning each one like they held some unspoken truth. "This is beautiful," the woman murmured, reaching out, but not touching a canvas of a sprawling oak tree, its branches stretching into a sunset of deep purples and burning golds. "Did you paint all of these yourself?" Maya straightened slightly, catching the genuine interest in the woman's voice. "Yeah," she said, "every single one." The woman nodded, her gaze flickering to the handwritten sign on the table, reading the words carefully. When she looked back at Maya, there was something different in her expression. Not pity, not the careful, measured kindness Maya had gotten used to from strangers who didn't know what else to say. There was something sharper, more thoughtful. "My name's Aisha Thompson," the woman said, offering a small, confident smile. I run an arts blog here in the city. I love finding independent artists, local talent, especially people with real passion behind their work. Maya hesitated, unsure where this was going, but something about the way Aisha spoke made her lean in. Would you mind if I took a few pictures? Aisha continued, already pulling out her phone. Your work deserves to be seen. Maya's fingers tightened around the edge of the table. She wanted to believe that, but she'd spent all day being ignored, watching people skim right past her without a second thought. She had seen enough empty promises to know that words didn't always mean action. Still, what did she have to lose? Yeah, she said, forcing a nod. Go ahead. For the next few minutes, Aisha moved around the stand, snapping pictures of the paintings, of Maya sitting behind them, of the small sign that explained why she was there in the first place. She asked questions about Maya's style, about what inspired her, about how long she had been painting, and with every answer, Maya felt the knots of frustration and exhaustion in her chest loosen just a little. When Aisha finally tucked her phone away, she met Maya's eyes with something close to determination. People should hear this story, she said. I'll make sure they do. Maya wanted to believe that, but she had learned not to put too much faith in hope. So she only nodded, offered a quiet thanks, and watched as Aisha walked away. She didn't think much of it. She had met people before who promised to spread the word, who said they admired what she was doing, but nothing ever really changed. By the time the sun dipped lower and the streetlights flickered on, the weight of exhaustion had settled deep in her chest. She had sold exactly one painting today, $50. She tried not to think about how many more paintings she would have to sell to even come close to affording the next round of treatment. She tried not to think about the numbers at all. Instead, she packed up, folding the small table, tucking the canvases back into the worn fabric portfolio she had carried with her. For years, the jar nearly empty rattled softly as she picked it up, the single bill inside barely making a sound. Tomorrow would be another fight, and Maya wasn't done yet. The morning air was thick with the scent of fresh bread and coffee from the nearby cafes. As Maya set up her stand again, her movements slow but determined. The ache in her limbs from the previous day lingered, but she ignored it. She had to. She arranged the canvases carefully, adjusting their angles under the soft light filtering through the buildings. The tourists were already moving through the French Quarter, some with cameras around their necks, others sipping iced lattes. As they strolled past the street vendors, Maya glanced at her nearly empty tip jar, the same crumpled bill from yesterday still sitting inside, and exhaled slowly. Today had to be better. It had to be. She barely had time to settle onto her stool before she noticed something different. A couple of pedestrians slowed as they passed her stand, not just glancing but actually stopping. A man in a dark hoodie took out his phone, reading the small sign she had propped up, his eyebrows furrowing slightly before he snapped a quick picture. A woman whispered something to her friend, pointing at Maya's paintings. The shift was small, subtle, but it was there. Then her phone vibrated. She pulled it from her pocket, her fingers stiff from the lingering morning chill. A text from Lucas, her best friend. "Dude, check this out." A link followed. Maya clicked it, and the second the page loaded, her breath caught. Aisha's article. It was there in black and white on the front page of NOLA Arts magazine. Fighting for art, fighting for life. The young painter turning canvases into hope. The words blurred for a moment as Maya's pulse pounded in her ears. She scanned the paragraphs, taking in the story that was now out in the world. Aisha had captured everything from the way Maya had grown up sketching in the back of her father's auto shop to the way she had poured herself into her paintings after her diagnosis. It wasn't a sob story, not some plea for pity. It was real. It was about resilience. Maya barely had time to process it before something else happened. A customer walked up. A real one. Not someone stopping to offer empty sympathy or a regretful shake of the head. A woman in her early 40s wearing a blouse and jeans. Her expression serious but kind. "Are these yours?" she asked, gesturing toward the canvases. Maya nodded, her voice catching for a split second before she found it. "Yeah, they're mine." The woman's gaze lingered on a cityscape bathed in deep blue and gold, lights shimmering in the painted streets as if they were real. "This one, how much?" Maya swallowed. 100. The woman nodded. No hesitation. She pulled out her wallet, and just like that, Maya felt the soft weight of crisp bills pressed into her palm. The moment hit her all at once. This wasn't charity. The woman hadn't read the sign and sighed sympathetically. She had seen the painting, wanted it, and bought it. Maya blinked, her fingers tightening around the money, trying to ignore the way her chest ached with relief. "Thank you," she said, her voice quieter than she intended. The woman just smiled, tucking the painting under her arm as she walked away. And then another. A couple stopped flipping through the canvases, talking in low voices about which one would go best in their living room. Then a young man, maybe a college student, hesitated before finally pulling out his wallet for a smaller piece, shaking his head as if he couldn't believe he was actually buying real art. It was happening. Aisha's article had done more than just tell Maya's story. It had brought people to her, people who saw her not as a struggling girl in need of help, but as an artist. The afternoon passed in a blur of transactions and conversations. By the time the sun had shifted to cast golden light through the buildings, Maya had sold 7 paintings. 7, more than she had sold in the past 2 weeks combined. And yet, she knew this was only a start, because even as she counted the money, at the end of the day, even as she felt the smallest, most fragile weight of hope settle in her chest, she also knew the truth. It still wasn't enough, not for what she needed. And she had no idea that the biggest moment of her life was about to arrive. The next morning, Maya arrived earlier than usual, the weight of exhaustion still clinging to her limbs, but there was something else beneath it now. Momentum. The day before had been different. For the first time, people had stopped. Really stopped. Not out of pity, not out of obligation, but because they saw something in her art that spoke to them. It had felt real, like a crack in the wall she had been pushing against for so long. But cracks weren't enough. She needed a door. She unfolded her table with careful hands, her muscles sore from lugging her canvases home the night before. As she arranged them, she took a moment to step back to study them the way a customer might. The cityscape, bathed in deep blue and gold, was gone. The empty space where it had sat, making the display feel incomplete. That was a good thing, she reminded herself. It meant something had shifted. People were noticing. She barely had time to sit before she felt it again. The difference, the shift in the air. Pedestrians slowed as they passed, their eyes lingering longer. Some whispered to each other, their gazes flickering between the paintings and their phones. A young woman no older than Maya clutched her friend's arm, nudging her toward the stand. "That's her," the girl whispered, just loud enough for Maya to catch. "The one from the article." Maya's pulse kicked up, her fingers tightening around the city's bloodstream, spreading faster than Maya had dared to hope. Then another surprise. A woman in her mid-30s, dressed in sleek athletic wear, approached with confident strides, her sunglasses pushed to the top of her head. She held up her phone, the screen glowing with an article Maya instantly recognized as Aisha's piece. "I read this last night," the woman said, glancing from her screen to Maya. "You're incredible." your work, your story. It's inspiring. She paused, scanning the table, then pointed to a piece Maya had finished just 2 nights ago. A painting of the French Quarter at dusk, lanterns glowing along the cobblestone streets, the sky melting from soft lavender to deep indigo. How much? Maya swallowed hard, heat prickling at the back of her neck. 200. The woman didn't hesitate. She reached into her purse, pulled out her wallet, and handed over a stack of crisp 20s. Maya took them with trembling fingers, barely able to believe this was happening. Then another customer came, and another. By noon, she had sold 4 paintings, more than she ever had in a single morning. It was dizzying, watching her work disappear from the table one by one, feeling the weight of real money in her hands. Not enough to cover her treatment. Not yet, but enough to believe. She had started the day hoping she would sell a few pieces. By midday, she was praying she had enough paintings left. Then her phone buzzed. She almost ignored it, but something made her glance down. A message from Lucas. "Dude, check Twitter right now." Maya frowned, swiping open the app, her heart already hammering. She had barely typed her name into the search bar when she saw it. Her face, her art, everywhere. Screenshots of Aisha's article flooded the timeline, but that wasn't what made her breath catch. It was the video, a short, shaky clip of her selling a painting that morning, the buyer handing over a thick wad of cash. The caption read, "She's painting her way through cancer. Buy her art. Support her fight." Posted 4 hours ago, it already had 20,000 retweets. Maya's vision blurred at the edges, her fingers trembling as she scrolled through comments too fast to process. Where is she selling? "I need to buy something. Someone set up a GoFundMe for her. Her art is stunning. We need to make sure she gets her treatment. Tagging Art Hope Foundation. This is the kind of talent that deserves a chance." Her stomach dropped. Hope Foundation. Everyone knew that name. It was one of the largest philanthropic organizations in the country, founded by Jamal Richardson. Maya's chest tightened, her breath coming shallow. She blinked hard, forcing herself to stay grounded. Nothing had changed. Just because someone tagged them didn't mean they'd see it. Just because thousands were sharing her story didn't mean it would reach the right eyes. But for the first time since she had set up her table, she wondered if maybe, just maybe, this fight wasn't hers alone anymore. The late afternoon sun dipped lower, casting elongated shadows over the streets of New Orleans. The hum of the French Quarter swelled into a lively murmur. Tourists bargaining, musicians tuning, the clang of streetcars in the distance. But for Maya, the world shrank to her table, her phone screen glowing in trembling hands. The post was still climbing, 50,000 retweets now, comments flooding in. People wanted to buy her art. People wanted to help. But the one name that kept appearing, Hope Foundation, made her pulse pound. Maya squeezed her phone, reminding herself not to get her hopes up. The internet moved fast, but forgot fast. Still, something had shifted. People stopped at her table with genuine interest. A middle-aged man in a tailored jacket handed her crisp bills without asking for a price. A group of college students pooled money to buy 2 paintings, as if on a mission. Then it happened. A ripple through the crowd. A strange quiet. People looked across the sidewalk. A woman gasped. A man lifted his phone to record. Maya's heartbeat stumbled. A tall figure, broad-shouldered, tailored dark suit, moved with a presence that commanded attention. Jamal Richardson, the billionaire philanthropist, the CEO whose name had echoed through her phone all afternoon. And now he was walking straight toward her table. Maya's lungs locked. Jamal moved with unhurried confidence, hands tucked into his pockets, his sharp gaze sweeping her paintings. He looked exactly like the magazine covers, charismatic, self-assured. But here, he wasn't a CEO. He was a man studying art, as if reading stories only he could see. Maya froze, breath caught. Then Jamal spoke. You made these?" His voice was deep, deliberate. Not condescending, not doubtful, just weighty. Maya swallowed. "Yeah, every single one." Jamal nodded, picked up a painting, the lone oak tree silhouetted against twilight. "A piece about resilience." He studied it, then asked, "This one, what's the price?" Maya's throat tightened. $200. Jamal smirked, not mocking but amused. "That's not enough." Before she could respond, he pulled out a leather checkbook. He wrote smoothly, tore the page, and handed it to her. Maya's hands shook. She looked down. $100,000. Her pulse thundered. This can't be real." Jamal tilted his head. "It's real." Maya stammered, "I can't take this." His voice remained even. "It's not charity. It's an investment. Your talent is real. I see it. And I'm not the only one who will." He gestured to the crowd, their phones raised, their eyes locked on her. "You're not just selling paintings on the street anymore. That ends today." Then, with composure unshaken, he set the painting down, tucked his hands into his pockets, and walked away. The street erupted. People shouted, rushed forward, cash in hand. Maya clutched the check, dazed. This wasn't just about leukemia anymore. This was a door bursting open. A future she thought impossible, crashing into her reality. The days blurred. One moment, she was invisible. Another, she was viral. Headlines, interviews, millions of views of Jamal's check. Hashtags multiplied. Art Heals, Maya Brooks, Hope Foundation. Offers poured in. The money was enough. More than enough. She paid for her chemotherapy in full the very next day. A week later, a black envelope arrived, embossed with the Hope Foundation logo. Inside was a handwritten letter from Jamal. "Maya, your fight reminds me why stories matter. Why art matters. People will tell you luck brought you here. Don't believe them. You did this. You kept showing up, kept fighting, proved your work was worth seeing. Don't stop now. Keep painting. Keep telling your story. And when the time comes, help someone else do the same." Jamal. Maya's fingers tightened around the letter. For years, she had only survived. Now, for the first time, she stood at the edge of something bigger. She wasn't afraid anymore. She set the letter down, turned to a blank canvas, and picked up her brush. This was just the beginning.